Hi, I'm Deborah Price. I'm the founder and CEO of the Money Coaching Institute, and I am here today with my dear friend and comrade in the money coaching world, Karen Eley, who is from Adelaide, Australia. So, Karen, thank you so much for joining me today. It's wonderful to see you. And I just want to start out by telling everyone, first of all, Karen has been one of our teachers for quite a few years now, and she's an excellent teacher and knows this work backwards and forwards. But not everybody knows your story, Karen. So I thought maybe we could get started with just talking about how it is that you came to the work and how that has impacted or influenced your work today.
Thanks, Deborah. So I was a financial advisor for 18 years and I had my own practice here in Adelaide. We had 26 staff and I loved being a financial advisor. But very early on, I was always curious around why people do what they do with money. So I was a little bit different to most financial advisors that would have their fact find and be asking for occupation and income and expenses and assets and liabilities. I'd start off with what did you learn about money from your parents, from your mum, from your dad? So I'd actually kind of not knowingly stepped into your world very early on in the piece, and as time progressed, I was more interested in that than portfolio returns and investment portfolios and things like that. So I went down the path of thinking that another way that I could help people was with financial literacy, because in Australia, we're not taught money at school. And unless you had really good parents and role models, we get to become adults and kind of don't really know a lot about money. And I really did like that educational part of being a financial advisor. And then yeah, fortunately, I came across a coaching institute, and I thought, well, maybe I could integrate some coaching as part of my financial education that I want to do and establish a new business. And so I did this coaching work a life coaching course in Melbourne. And as I was going through it, I was like, all of these different models and strategies that are helping people and their inner dynamics, you could put a financial lens over them and apply them to money.
Mhm.
And then I just started doing some research and very, very fortunately came across the Money Coaching Institute and your lovely self. And the work just resonated so much with me, my passion, my thoughts around how impactful this is. So I went all in and sold my financial planning practice and set up my own money coaching business after working with you. And so, from a professional side, that was really life changing for me, but also from a personal side, Deborah. So, we did as part of the course during the CMC, we get students to do their own money coaching. And that for me was life changing. And what I mean by that, Deborah, is that I was a financial advisor. I knew all the things that you need to do with money, but for some reason, I had quite a chronic spending behavior and a
I
pattern.
remember this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I earned good money, but none of it ever stuck around. I would just spend it all. And I would say, well, I've never got myself into debt. I didn't have credit cards or anything like that. So I was kind of like, oh, yeah. But I was really unconscious to money. And even though I was a financial advisor helping other people with their finances, I wasn't really doing the same for myself. And it wasn't until we did that work together when I explored my own money story that I had some very significant uh, defining moments around money being taken away from me. And so my unconscious belief around money is, what's the point in saving? Someone's going to take it from me. And that actually did happen when I did do some savings. Partners took it away, substantial amounts of money. But
Yeah.
then when we uncovered the origin of where that come from, and then you supporting me to say, well, you're an adult, Karen, of course you can save and protect your money. And so then I went down a path of understanding that and believing that, and everything changed for me, Deborah, everything. So I went from not having a lot of savings to be comfortable accumulating a lot and knowing that I could protect it and look after it. And so for me was a really powerful story, one that I can share with other people, but it's had such an impact on me that I just had to share it with the rest of the world, and yeah, also bring other people in financial services to this work, which is also another big passion of mine.
Absolutely. Isn't it amazing how we can have something as what appears to be as simple as I know all the right things to do. I'm a trained professional, but I'm not doing it. And I don't even know why I'm not doing it. And have that thing just be sort of running in the background for most of your life until the moment shows up that you get a chance to look at it through a different lens. And then suddenly you realize there's a reason for it. And the reason is actually pretty logical and rational when you think about it. You know, protect it. If you can't protect it or keep people from getting it, it makes sense just to spend it. Except in the long run, it doesn't serve, right? I'm
Correct.
wondering, how many people do you think you've encountered in your own practice who might have that same dynamic at play? Because I see it a lot, where it's just not safe to have too much money for one reason or another.
I see it quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that whole safety around money, and there's lots of different ways that people can feel unsafe around money. Money can cause problems. So money is a cause of fight and contention and conflict in a family. Uh, bad things happen to me when I do have money. So yeah, it's a very common dynamic. But unless we can actually shine a light on it. So I was in the dark about that was the reason I was spending, because I had this inner belief, a very deep belief that was proven right to me, that what's the point in saving because someone will take it from me.
And I'm not sure it's just a belief, though. I think it's beyond the belief. It's a hardwired, subconsciously driven pattern. So you weren't conscious that you even had the belief, and the pattern existed even at a deeper level than the belief does. That's what I notice, is that you can begin to identify maybe that you have a belief or certain ways of thinking or what everybody talks to today about mindset work, but it's insufficient if it's actually a hardwired pattern, because just changing your mind isn't going to do the full job, right? So
Correct. Yeah, correct.
did you overcome that in terms of once you identified it? Did you set something into motion to effectively change it? And then have you passed that down to other clients, who you've now discovered have a similar dynamic?
Yeah, really, I'm so glad that you asked me that question because, yeah, for me, it was that belief, but then it showed up in the pattern, and the pattern was just going shopping. Like my Saturdays would just be go to the shopping mall and just wander around, and just my strategy was see it, love it, buy it. So I had
Well,
to.
why not?
That's how I ended up with over 100 pairs of shoes that must have been a caterpillar in another life. So it was very much around changing that pattern, because even today, Deborah, I get that urge. And, this is 7 years later, I still kind of get that urge. It's still there. So I just want to acknowledge that it is still there. But I can ask myself, I'm conscious about having that pattern, and I can ask myself, what is the real reason that I'm wanting to do this? So what I had to go through was it was quite drastic. So I just said, I'm just going to have a 6 month where I don't buy anything. And when I say don't buy anything, my main go-tos was shoes and clothes. So I had a wardrobe full of that. So I went through a process of, and I had a high full money type. So I had to gamify it, make it fun for me. So I went through my wardrobe and I started kind of like, how can I mix and match and do different things and try different things to just kind of mix it up a little bit. But it was very much around 6 months, no spending. So
Beautiful.
yeah, and that worked. And so then I'd interrupted that pattern around that default around going shopping. That was kind of like my pastime, and found other things to do to fill my time.
I think that's actually really key too, is to find other options to shopping or whatever the challenges that a person has. We do need to replace it with something healthier, right? So that the mind has a place to go, to say, oh, I'm not going to do this, but I can do this, and this is going to feel good as well, and not be
Mm.
harmful to my bank account.
Yeah, correct. And so for me, mine was running. So I started
Beautiful.
running. And but what I found that gave me the greatest success, Deborah, was having other people to do it
Mm.
with. So I've got a bit of a running group. There's like three of us that go running, and so there's always two of us if someone's sick or can't go. So it really just does keep me accountable. And I think that's the power of having a coach, just having that accountability and someone to
Right.
work with me, because I would have found it very difficult doing it on my own, but doing it with others kind of like you can motivate and inspire them when they're down, and they can do the same when you're kind of not feeling that motivated to just kind of bring you up. So
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, I mean, all highly successful business people and athletes and many other people know that they're usually only improving as a direct result of being coached, because we can't always see it for ourselves, and we do need to be accountable. Sometimes, especially when we're making changes in our lives, having somebody there who spots you and who is your ally and your advocate um, is enormously. I mean, I'm sure you see that with your clients as well. It gives them the extra little boost that they need to keep going, especially when it
absolutely.
is
Yeah,
challenging. Yeah.
exactly. And I believe in them until they can believe in themselves. I think that's a key. Yeah. Having someone believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself.
And I can't tell you how many people I have heard talk about you as a coach, how wonderful you are. I mean, I would assume it already, but to hear it over and over again, you're really very, very good. And so that makes me really happy for you and for the people that you work with. So,
Thanks, Deborah.
when you think about your life now and what's going on with you now, what would you say the biggest difference that you've seen in your clients now that you're doing coaching versus when you were just a financial, not just, but when you were doing financial planning and investment advice? What do you think the biggest changes that you see now that maybe you didn't see before?
So I think it's really around clients' relationships, their relationship with money, but also their relationship with themselves. And
Mm.
that's where I find the biggest value is around whatever challenges they're having around money. Quite often, it's a reflection of some challenges that they're having with their own self identity. So, to be able to help people on that level, whilst money's so integral to so many parts of our life, whether it be our career, our job, our family, what we can do, what we can't do, I think even deeper than that is your relationship with yourself, your self belief, and the joy that you can have from celebrating. Well, firstly, finding out what your God given gifts are in this world, what you're here to do, connecting with your purpose. I think there's nothing more valuable than that. And that's something
Right.
that you can't do in a financial planning office with some portfolios and insurance and superannuation. Also, all very, very important. It's just a different level.
It's interesting because my vision is and will always has been and will continue to be that every financial planning firm has a money coach on staff, because I believe so much that this work needs to be the horse before the cart, right? Money coaching before you do financial planning and give investment advice makes so much more sense, because most financial planners and advisors don't really know their customers very well. Like,
Mm,
they know them about this deep compared to how we know our clients. And of course,
correct.
the better you know your client, the more informed you can be in terms of what is appropriate for them and what is
Mm,
not appropriate, and what their true risk tolerance is very archetypal. So when you think about that in terms of the Australian market, and you're going through so many changes there, do you think there's any possibility that you might see the day when more and more financial service and investment advisory firms are adopting money coaching as something that they bring in and have somebody who's on staff who works with their clients on this particular piece?
Deborah, I would love to see that because that is my vision too. I would love for financial planning firms to have either someone in their office or someone that they refer to. And I do have financial advisors that refer clients to me and realize that, yes, they need to go and do some money coaching before coming on as a client. But they tend to be the very, very severe financial patterns and behaviors. So yeah, really the really, really tricky ones, which is great because I love those. But I think everyone could benefit from money coaching, including financial advisors. I would love to see as part of, just like when we have people do the CMC course that they do their own money coaching, I would love for as part of financial planning, when you go through the process to get your qualifications, that you actually go through the process of money coaching. That would be fantastic, I think. So, yeah, in Australia, we have a requirement for financial advisors that they must know their client. And I completely agree with you. They take it from the surface level, know your client around their
Right.
income, their expenses, and their assets and liabilities, and their risk profile. But I would love to see, as part of that fact finding process where they're getting to know their client, that they bring in the money type quiz and actually understand, well, what are the different archetypes or money types that are playing out with this client? Because we both know that when we know these inner dynamics that will go on for the client, we can serve them and provide financial advice to them in such a more meaningful way that's going to resonate with them and is going to work with their particular dynamics that come out to play.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, and we know this very clearly, is that emotions and behaviors drive decisions. All financial decisions are driven by emotions and behaviors. So if you don't know those dynamics at play, how can you possibly assess someone's risk? To me, it's that simple,
Couldn't agree
because
more.
the behaviors are the factor that will determine that. And there's nothing there. There's just nothing there that supports the understanding of the client at that level, and therefore it runs quite a bit short.
Mm.
And I
I think
suppose, I'm a former investment advisor too. You can always say, well, we're just going to do a really balanced portfolio. But even still, it's not, you know, meeting the true need of that particular client if you don't understand them at a deeper level.
mm. I think
So,
another question financial advisors could explore is understanding an individual's financial fears, because fears are
mhm,
such powerful
mhm.
motivators for behaviors. So, just by asking the question or getting the client to reflect on, what's your biggest financial fear, understanding that about your client will help in so many different ways.
So when speaking of fears, because we talk about fears, anxieties, stresses around money all the time, what do you think? What's your perception of what the greatest money fears are for people? Like, what do you think the top three fears are that people contend with?
The biggest, and it wins by a mile, Deborah, is retiring broke, getting to my end of my life and eating baked beans or just having no money,
Yeah. Running out.
running out.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the biggest one, running out.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, more and more, and I'm reading a lot of research that supports this, is that people are truly terrified of financial loss. And this keeps people from investing at all.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was going
So
to be my next one, having
let's think
money
about
and then
that.
losing it.
Right. So let's think about that in terms of the industry and the opportunity. If you had more financial professionals trained and understood this stuff, and they could start addressing the fears very specifically in the behaviors, think about all the people who are not in the market, who they might be able to convince, not in a hard sell kind of way, but from the standpoint of managing the underlying fears and behaviors. This is what you can do to manage that and here are some investment strategies that would help you get into this without taking so much fear and without worrying about losing everything. Because I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in the US, probably only 30 to 40% of all the people who are offered, for example, a 401k, which is sort of like your superannuation, right? Even put any money in it. And the reason for it is they're afraid they're going to lose it. They don't trust the markets. They don't trust investment advisors, and or they're terrified that if they invest it, they're going to lose it or they'll need it and then they won't have access. These are
Similar
all
here.
solvable
Yeah,
problems.
similar here. The other distrust that I hear is, distrust of the advisors, of the markets, but also of the government. Because
Yeah,
the government sets the legislation around the rules of what you can and can't do with your superannuation. So over the years, I've had a lot of clients, well, I'm not putting my money in super because you just can't trust it.
right.
And that's a very emotional response
Exactly.
rather than a rational, logical one. And so as
And then if
financial
you
advisors, we
came,
tend to come from that rational, logical way,
exactly,
but you can't
exactly.
fight emotion with logic and ration.
You cannot do that. So anybody who's listening to this, please hear us. You cannot fight emotion with logic. It doesn't work. In fact, it just upsets people,
It
truthfully.
does.
I mean,
Yeah.
it really does.
It really does.
So
It really upsets people and they feel not understood. And when you don't feel
not heard,
understood,
not
you'll just
understood.
switch off.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so when you look at just the missed opportunity from the standpoint of the investment community, and then the missed opportunity on the part of the clients worldwide who are not able to manage or sustain, the potential loss and their fears and apprehensions and mistrust, if you could just find a way of managing that, doing good work, coaching people, helping people to understand more effectively, there's plenty of opportunity on both sides so that people can actually invest and do better, which means they will have money longer, less likely to run out, which is the big fear, right? And the investment community
Mm-hmm.
would attract more dollars of the people who are just not willing to take the chance. So I think we
Mm.
actually offer a solution there and a potential bridge. So all the more reason, the question is, why do you think they're so reluctant to consider this? Because that's what's perplexed me for 25 years.
Well, I can share experience that I've had with conversations with financial advisors. There is that fear around opening up Pandora's box and them not being able to hold a space. So, as coaches, we can say we hold a safe space where these emotions, these fears
Mhm.
can all come out and we can manage that. But unless you're actually trained in this work, it is very hard. It can be a very awkward conversation. So, it's going to be ones that financial advisors avoid if they don't feel comfortable doing that. And I completely understand. So, before doing this work with you, Deborah, it would have been very challenging to have some of the conversations that I feel very comfortable having today with clients.
Yeah.
Another dynamic that I think could be really helpful for financial advisors is the couple dynamic. So, Deborah, you and I both enjoy working with couples and doing this work, not just
My favorite
individual
work.
one-on-one, but having a look at how it plays out with couples, because quite often in a financial advising office, you've got a husband and wife. One of them will be the dominant financial spouse and they'll be all over it. And the other person just sits there quietly and getting them involved and understanding. And it's normally those fears
Mhm.
around not knowing what to do and feeling stupid because you don't have that financial knowledge, fears of loss, lots of different things playing out that we don't even get to know or explore with that non-financial spouse.
That's right. And what a tremendous difference it makes when a couple has a coach to navigate what is often a minefield, literally, for them to even open up the conversation around money because it's so charged and often heated. So I can imagine that a lot of financial service professionals would be very reluctant to go there because it can be even more challenging. And so many advisors are conflict avoidant, right? They don't want to, it's like, oh, we don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. And as a result of that, couples often don't make it because they can't agree. They can't even talk about it to reach an agreement. How much of your work are you, couples work are you doing now at this point? Are you doing much?
I focused on it a lot a few years ago.
Mhm,
Not as much now, but I still do work with several couples.
mhm.
Yeah. And yeah, it's really special work because, like you said, some couples won't make it. And there's statistics show us that the second biggest cause of relationship breakdown is money and the finances, followed by, the first one is infidelity. So, and unfortunately, the statistics also show that couples will go 6 or 7 years before seeking help. And, there's a lot of damage done in those years. So when it can be identified earlier and dealt with and managed, it can save a lot more relationships and money at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I just had a wonderful meeting right before I came on the podcast with you with a young couple who I've been working with for a couple of months, and they actually almost split up a couple of weeks ago. And they just called me um, this week and said, we want to meet with you. We figured some things out and we were coming back together and meeting with them. It was so interesting to just see how, as a result of the coaching work, they were able to work through a conflict that had they not had that time first, they wouldn't have made it. And so they become increasingly more resourceful over time, and they get braver and they're willing to have conversations, and they were so happy. I mean, it was like just such a joy to spend the hour with them and see them in such a positive place. And they were in a horrible place 2 weeks ago. But, it turns things around. And I
Mm,
often wonder too, it's like um, I understand many financial service professionals' reticence to get in, rolling up their sleeves and getting into the emotional behavioral dynamics. I get that. But there really isn't any reason why having a trained certified money coach on staff wouldn't be a solution to that problem for advisors who don't want to do it, but they know it's important. And I'm just curious if you think that that's a increasing possibility, or do you think there are still going to be many blocks to this, even as the various sort of governing bodies seem to be opening more and more to money coaching, money therapy, blah, 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 whatever people are calling it these days?
mm. I have no doubt that financial advisors do see the need for that. And just like they might refer to an accountant or to an estate planning lawyer, there's no reason why they couldn't refer to a certified behavioral money coach.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, there's a lot of good that we can do there. And like you taught me doing your course, is that there's so many different levels of intimacy between a couple. And one of the key ones is that financial intimacy. And the work that we can do with couples is to really build that financial intimacy between a couple where they both feel comfortable and have a safe space to
Yeah.
discuss finances.
And talk about paying dividends. The couples who reach levels of financial intimacy, they're lifelong clients because you changed their lives and you saved their marriage or whatever. So I think there's lots of good reasons. So we'll have to work a little harder at the financial services industry and knock on more doors, I think,
Mm.
in the future.
Deborah, while we've got this time together, I'm going to flip and ask you a question if you don't
Please.
mind. And it's because over the past 12 months, I have seen more and more clients come to work with me that are neurodiverse.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if you've seen a similar pattern or theme, or that maybe they're just attracted to me. But and I'm really enjoying working with these individuals because they have even more challenges than than the rest of us, because of the way that their brain works. And obviously the work we do in money coaching is very heavily reliant on and built on neuroscience and the study of our brain and how that works. I'm just curious if you had much to do with the neurodiverse
Oh,
community.
well, as you know, I'm neurodiverse myself. So, um, and I'm in the process of developing a coaching model for people with ADD and ADHD because it is becoming such a big phenomena. And I'm also becoming a ADHD practitioner, not for purposes, I can't diagnose specifically, but I have assessments, and of course, treatment has to be done through a doctor or psychiatrist. But for those of you who don't know, anybody with ADD or ADHD, and there are other types of neurodiversity, autism, spectrum disorders, there's not a one size fits all. And even how one person is who has ADHD versus another one could be vastly different. So please know when we discuss neurodiversity that there's a spectrum that is quite vast and not at all something that you should label people accordingly, because it's really truly unique to the individual. But from a money coaching standpoint, I'm beginning to think that the reason that we're seeing more and more of it is because after COVID, or during COVID rather, so many women in particular were diagnosed who were never diagnosed before, because ADHD in particular was never considered something that women got, right? And the odd thing about that is that why, it's not like it's based upon your sex, you're male or female, it does not really make a difference, although women's behaviors can be vastly different for ADD and ADHD. The symptoms are quite different often. So what happened during COVID worldwide is that so many people were diagnosed because suddenly we didn't have the same structures. And women came home who were working, and suddenly they were managing the kids and the family and the dog and the cat, and they're still trying to hold a job down and homeschooling, blah, blah, blah. And people were fraying at the edges. And so I'm sure men were a part of that too, but vastly the research that I've seen just shows how wrong they were to consider that women didn't get these issues, or girls from elementary school forward. And and I think the other thing is that as more and more conversation has happened around neurodiversity, there's less shame because there is a stigma around it. And I certainly have experienced it myself. Like there's something wrong with you. But in all honesty, if you happen to have ADD or ADHD, there are some really amazing superpowers that it comes with as well. So it's not all negative. And around money in particular, there are just ways in which the brain processes information around money and prefrontal cortex dynamics. Many people with ADHD, for example, have a history of being bad at math. This is a neuroprocessing issue. It is not an intelligence issue. And here's the thing, is that people who thought they were bad with math probably weren't, and subsequently they have money issues. Because thinking you're bad with math makes you develop avoidance tendencies around working with numbers and thinking about numbers and math in general. And so that avoidance stuff kicks in, right? So then the person goes down that rabbit hole of, I'm not good at it, I can't do it, feeling helpless and powerless. And now that the stigma is starting to go away and more people are getting help and support, they can get that help and also realize that there was nothing ever wrong with them. In fact, like I thought I was terrible at math, it turns out I'm actually quite good at it. I just was not well treated, and I had very bad math teachers who shamed me publicly and humiliated me, which was not
Mm.
nice and inappropriate. So
Yeah. And
I think that's what's going on. And of
mm,
course, you're in Australia, but I think the US and Australia are really interesting mirrors in terms of our, social dynamics,
there's a
different
lot
than
more
the UK.
conversations around
Exactly.
neurodiversity, which is great.
The
And
UK, British still sort of buttoned down. They don't talk about as much, they don't want people to know. But I think the US and Australia are much more open and less
mm,
judgmental about it overall.
yeah, I would agree with you on that. My son was diagnosed late last year when I was going through the questions that I had to answer for him. I was like, yeah, that applies to me and me and me. And probably, on some level, I have it too, but I've been able to manage it okay. But what I'm seeing is the shame and
Big.
guilt that individuals carry around money. And it's not about that they're bad with money, they just haven't been taught how their brain processes it and
That's
how to work with their brain to be good at money. That's all it is. And so when you can show people that, it makes such a difference and give them the strategies that will work for them and the
Yeah.
way that they process information.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, though, that I've experienced um, is that many people who were diagnosed later in life and who've already sort of suffered consequences around it,
Mm,
right? That there's a very high victim archetype associated with it.
correct. Yeah, I see that playing out as well. And there's like a loss and a grief for
Yeah,
how things should have been for them
that's
versus
right.
how it is. My financial situation could have been so much different if I'd known, if I'd been diagnosed. And yeah, there's truth in that. But then
And
it
I
comes
experienced
to,
that myself.
mm, mm,
I just thought I've done relatively well in my life, but had I been diagnosed earlier, do you know what I could have done? A lot more. And you can never recover those years, but you can't stay a victim of it either if you expect
mm,
to move ahead. And so, the messaging for us when we're working with these clients is you need to grieve the
mm,
loss and the understanding that this happened and it's not okay, but you can only get the help and support you need now and commit to making the changes you need now and move forward and let that go because it'll take you down and then you just have another problem. So now you have ADHD and you can have support for that, but you can't stay a victim of the past if you expect for anything to get better in your life and sustain that, right?
mm.
So that
Yeah.
becomes the second issue. And I'm working with three different people right now who have a very high victim dynamic going associated with their ADHD and the way it's affected them financially.
And I think a big part of that is it is the grief. And that's why I use that language because it is a grief. It's something, it's a loss, a potential loss. But then you and I are also big advocates of forgiveness as well. So forgiveness for ourselves, forgiveness for other people in our life. And I think that is an important part of the process when identifying the
Absolutely.
diagnosis and how your situation could have been different.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of hope. So anybody who happens to be listening to this, if you happen to have any issues relative to neurodiversity, reach out to us. We're quite capable of working with you and helping you. You don't have to suffer. There's a lot of help and support available to you, regardless of where you are. Okay. So, Karen, first of all, thanks for asking that question. I really appreciate it. Um, when you think about this work and its potential, um, what message would you like to give to people out there in terms of just what wisdom do you have to offer that you think might be valuable to people who might be thinking about doing something, but they're not really sure, or maybe they don't even understand fully? What wisdom would you want to impart?
my wisdom would be around doing some me search. So really getting to know yourself. Like at the end of the day, yes, we've got people around us and we've got all of these things external, but the most important thing to have is your relationship with yourself. And I find one of the biggest parts of this work is getting to know yourself on a much deeper level, and doing that and finding the beauty, having self-compassion for yourself. It'll just impact so many other surprisingly great areas of your life. And this work and the framework that you've created provides the perfect pathway to do that.
And as they say, I don't remember who said it, but an unexamined life is not worth living.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of why we're here, to just really, there's no greater work in the world to do or no greater privilege than to know oneself, I believe. And all of us, and all of you are worth knowing. That's the thing that we really hope that you hear is there's not any part of you that's not worth knowing. So go the journey.
And those parts of you that you don't like, they're there to serve a purpose. They're there to protect you in some shape or form. And so doing this work, you can really understand what that purpose is and have self-love and compassion, because it's doing that for a reason. You may not feel like it's serving you, but on some level it is. And doing this work will help you uncover what that is.
That's right. Well, Karen, it's been so wonderful to spend some time with you today. I have no doubt that you're always doing great work out there. Is there anything about what you're up to now that you want to share with the audience? And please also give your website, et cetera, so people know how to reach out to you.
Thank you, Deborah. And ditto, it's always a delight and a pleasure to have a conversation with you. We didn't have anything prepared beforehand. We just jumped into it, and I think we've just navigated it beautifully. People can find me at womentalkingfinance.com.au. What I'm working on at the moment is doing some corporate work. So financial well-being and is really important to me. And so financial well-being for me is as much external as it is internal. So to be able to reach more people, I'm finding that we aren't taught money at school. And unless you grow up as an adult and you don't have these skills. And what I'm finding more and more common is that companies and corporates are sort of stepping in here, and how can we support our people better? And providing financial well-being rather than a fruit bowl in the office is becoming more popular. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, working with employers to how can we bring this work into the workplace to help benefit our people, because we've all been struggling. Like the last few years has been really hard with cost of living, and it's just about another way that we can support people and giving them a better access to this wonderful work that you've created.
I'm really happy to hear that. So maybe at some point you can share more with me. I'd be interested in knowing more what you're doing there.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. I wish you the best of luck with that and everything. And so thank you so much for joining me today. Everybody, thank you for being here. Deborah Price, the Money Coaching Institute. Feel free to look us up at moneycoachinginstitute.com and have a wonderful day.